All right, so welcome to the video. First episode in the series of getting to know college runners and hearing their story and their journey of how they got to where they are now. So our first guest, Noah Tyndale from Northernland High School, then ran at Liberty, if I'm correct. So first
Yeah,
off,
you nailed it, man.
let's go. Who are you and how did you get into running in the first place?
Wow. Yeah, what a loaded question. So you mentioned Guilderland. That's upstate New York. My name is Noah Tyndale. I currently go to Liberty University, and I grew up in a very small, it's called the Village of Altamont, very small village outside of town of Guilderland, which is right outside of Albany. And I always grew up around the sport of running. My dad was a high school cross country coach for a really small team for a number of years. From a very young age, I would go to all the practices. He would coach the cross country and track team. I'd go watch their meets. I watched him take a Class D super small school from basically not having a ton of talent, and he kind of built this team to state titles and for their team and individual titles. And so at a young age, I saw my dad coach, and I just became so intrigued with this idea of kind of building something from the bottom up. From a very young age, I didn't know specifically that running was something that I wanted to do, but I knew sports was in my heart. So and then all through my childhood, and played basketball, and middle school is when I finally got into running, and then took off from there. So that's the general background.
Yeah, that's cool. So what was it like did your dad coach you or?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what was it like
So
having your dad as a coach? And did that in a way impact you, your performance or your success, if you want to speak on that?
yeah, I think that's a great question. I've gotten that question a lot. He coached me from, well, he like officially coached me. I think it was from like sophomore year to senior year. He was kind of always my like background coach. It was interesting, man. Like, um, there's certain dynamics when you're an athlete. There's an athlete and coach relationship, to where anytime you're in a relationship with a coach, you're going to be talking about training, you're going to be talking about nutrition, you're going to be talking about kind of the technicalities. But then when he's your dad, you have to make sure that you have good boundaries with, like, okay, like, hey, dad, you're my dad, but right now you're my coach. And he knew all my friends and stuff, and so the good part about it was I felt like he was just super invested in my life, and he knew me as an athlete really well. He knew that I loved being a middle distance athlete and loved cross country. Well, loved did not love cross country. Loved speed, but also did have some of the endurance in me. They're all really good lessons that I learned, and he's a fantastic coach and just an incredible mentor, and many people look up to him. So
Yeah, so what did he have you, what would like a typical, let's say, week or training block or month look like for you when you started running, which was, if I remember, seventh grade?
yeah.
What did that look like for you, and how did that impact how you were running in that year, if you want to talk on that?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You're going to take me back in a time machine here. The training changed for me quite a bit as I kind of grew. In seventh and eighth grade, I was definitely focused more on distance training, just because, I was kind of new to the sport, in the sense that I was competing for the first time, and definitely growing as a person physically. I think middle school was just a lot of base stuff, like learning how to run and learning to let my body grow up a little bit. And then as it got towards ninth grade and 10th grade, he brought me down more towards middle distance stuff. So we implemented a lot of speed. Once March came around, we would increase mileage. we would start to implement some tempo workouts and things like that. And when I say increased mileage, I do not mean much. I mean, I was like doing 25 miles a week, but to me, it seemed like a lot. And so we get into the season, and there's a great group of middle distance athletes that I ran with. Basically, as we went through the season, we went from building a base to tempo to kind of honing in on a lot of those speed things. And, by the middle towards the end of the year, we were just kind of staying tip top shape. So a good progression of building distance and then coming back down. So,
yeah. So what would you say the balance between your natural ability and hard work was it for you to, well, what was your PRs? 424 in 8th grade, or so what part of that you think was your work, and how much work did you put into it, and how much was your natural ability?
you mean just overall, like it throughout high school in general?
Or yeah, throughout middle school, and then
Yeah.
increase in high school,
Yeah.
and what did it look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing to think about. Because I mean, middle school for me, I went from 6th and 7th grade not running at all to, 6th grade not running at all, 7th grade starting to run, and then 8th grade I was a national champion. So it was like, what kind of happened in there, right? Yeah, I ran a 422 1600, so I think a 424 full mile. And like the year before in 7th grade, I had broken 5. And so, yeah, the question is, right, like what, like what causes that, right? Like you don't just go from couch to like running a 420 mile. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said for certainly natural ability. I think God has certainly blessed me with the ability to have speed and to just a lot of athletic gifts, and I'm so grateful for. I think a lot of it did come through just playing sports when I was really young. Again, being dynamic, and that was what was fun for me, was to play sports and to be athletic. And so I guess that natural ability certainly did carry into middle school. I remember I did the elementary school mile, and that was always fun, and I would get super nervous for it. So there was always something in me that was quick and fast. But I mean, there's absolutely a lot to be said, especially when I got to high school. I worked really hard, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily saw that side of where, like, I definitely had the natural talent for sure. But I definitely put a lot of effort, maybe a little too much, like mental effort, into figuring out how to race well, and strategy and building mileage and all that. So I think it's definitely got to be a mix of both. But from the middle school standpoint, uh, at the time, a lot of it I think was just natural talent, because my body was still growing, and for whatever reason, it could run that fast, and I was not very heavy, so I was very light. And so I think primarily from the start it was natural talent, but then it progressed into a lot of hard work. So
Yep. So what was high school like? You mentioned how you were putting a lot of mental energy in it, and what was that like? Like, walk us through your years and the ups and downs of your high school career.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think in order to go back to understanding exactly what happened with my high school career, I do have to go back to middle school, because like I mentioned, I went from not really being a runner in the sense that competition wise, to very quickly becoming great, gaining a lot of attention. And 8th grade running a 424 mile, and I think I also split like a 156 800 as well. And I'll go back a little bit to that point, because I think it all started in 8th grade, because I was going back and forth with an athlete from New York who was also a stud in 8th grade. And we kind of went back and forth for like the 8th grade state records. And I remember I put so much energy into like reading Mile Split, and there's I don't know if you're familiar with letsrun.com. Yeah, they have all their like blog posts and their community boards and stuff like that. And I remember specifically there was one post about like fastest eighth grader in the nation, and they were debating like me and this other athlete. And so, you know, at a very early point when I had started to realize like, oh, I'm great at this, it was immediately I was thrown into this pressure of the running world of, oh my gosh, is he going to be the next person to break 4 in 5 years? You know, like, is he going to burn out really fast? There were a lot of those comments. And so for me, just as somebody who takes everything in, I wanted to prove people wrong, but I really wanted to be the best person I could be. And so I think heading into high school, there was this weight that I felt of, well, there was first this excitement of, oh my gosh, I get to prove something to the world. And my freshman year, I ran 4:14 in the 1600, which is still my PR to this day. And, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exciting. I could be really great at this. And I think, you know, there's more and more attention with Mile Split, and more, you know, me just growing up and trying to figure out friendships and trying to figure out school and trying to figure out like where I fit in. And I put so much energy from that point on into being like, okay, I got to maintain my name on Mile Split. I got to make sure colleges hear about me. I really want to run like a low 4-minute mile or break 4. And so as the years went on, sophomore year and junior year, I felt this weight of, oh my gosh, I need to show the world that, you know, I'm still as good as I was in 8th grade. And I felt pretty boxed in. So that's a lot of the general gist of the mental journey. And there's a lot of details that go into that. And fortunately, I've been able to work through a lot of that and become a much healthier athlete in person. But good and bad. There were good and bad things to being good at a young age.
Yeah, so how did you cope with, I would say, all the pressure, especially once colleges started to come on the scene, and
Yeah.
you're getting recruited, and I'm sure colleges were reaching out to you. What was that like for you? And what was that whole process of recruiting,
Yeah.
pressure, and everything that was going on?
Yeah, these are such good questions, because I think I think this mental journey is actually a big thing for a lot of athletes. It's just not talked about. And coping was also, it was a big process. I did not cope very well in like sophomore year and junior year. Those were the most stressful times because, you know, again, trying to maintain this, like, okay, I need to make sure I'm running fast times, because I mean, I got college letters in 9th grade. I got a letter from Baylor, a lot of Big Ten, SEC schools. I mean, just like, you know, that they knew who I was and wanted to, you know, encourage me to keep going. And so, yeah, a lot of the positive ways that I coped was definitely having an outlet of a community within my sport. My team was awesome, but then also outside of the sport, a couple of churches that I went to, and youth groups and things like that. I got my mind off of running to where I could just do some things for fun. So having that group of people around me. Another thing that was fantastic was, and we were talking about this right before you recorded, how creativity is such a great outlet for runners, because it can take your mind off of a lot of pressure. I started a social media account with one of my friends. His name was Noah as well. And we just kind of did the Noah show. Yeah, man, you got it.
Research on that, man.
Good. Yeah, we actually ended up having some like Mile Split videos with that, and worked for a Mile Split for to announce like an indoor race. But that we started that, and that I think we started that in 9th grade, in my 9th grade year. But that was really fun because we were able to kind of draw in a community on our team and our conference, to where we wanted people to see like, oh, this is like, the sport's supposed to be fun, you know. We can make it dynamic. Even though we're running laps on a track, we can make it dynamic and do videos and interviews and things like that. And a lot of that has helped me to become the person I am today with creative outlets and things like that. So those were positive ways I coped. Negatively, I think I talk about this a lot. I really struggle with depression and anxiety during that time, for sure. I'm just a highly anxious person in a good way, in the sense that like I'm energetic and get excited about things. But when they're out of my control. I end up falling pretty deeply into, I have to fight falling into places of like self-doubt and self-sabotage. And so, when you're in high school, you're trying to figure out where you belong, who you are. And I just didn't allow myself to do that because I put this weight on myself to okay, my mind's got to be in it, my body's got to be in it, I got to be going. And I didn't really have too many people helping me to see like, okay, you can stop for a little bit and that's okay. And so I was on medication for a little bit just for depression and things like that, and that was helpful. I eventually came off of it, and but really battled, like trying to live my own life and figure out, you know, do I even want to run in D1? Do I even want to go to college and things like that? I just didn't give myself a chance to do it. So again, very positive ways to cope, but also very negative ways to cope as well. And that's just a fraction of the journey. So
Yeah. So why did you choose Liberty as the flag behind you? If you didn't know it runs at Liberty.
it
Um,
is.
why did you choose Liberty, and how did that go? What advice would you give any high school runners who are maybe in the same boat as you, where it just feels like so much pressure in choosing college?
Yeah.
Why did you choose Liberty? What was that process?
Yeah. It's sad because there is so much pressure, and for like no reason, like truthfully, like college running is awesome. But I remember when I was finishing up high school, everybody was so worried, and people who weren't even athletes, everybody was so worried, like, oh, I got to get into this school, they have this program, blah, 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 blah. And, like we put a lot of pressure on these 15, 16, 17-year-old kids to like know what they're doing with their lives. And I'm 21 now, and I know less of what I want to do with my life than I did 3 years ago. And I'm happy about it because college has taught me basically that I don't know as much as I thought. And it's led me to actually learn how to be in relationship with people and how to grow and things like that. And so, yeah, I fell in love with Liberty when I didn't even know Liberty existed actually until like my junior year of high school. Because I was always like, I want to go to a big SEC school, like a Texas A&M, because their middle distance program is fantastic. And but as I went through high school, I was like, oh, I kind of want to go into ministry. And Liberty had the perfect mix. They were a Division I program that was on the way up, and they also had a biblical studies program for me to study ministry. And I was like, this is a win-win. So from junior year on, I was like, okay, I really want to go to Liberty. And so a lot of the decision was, they have great facilities. They have a good history of some big time athletes, Sam Chalanga, Josh McDougall, who have been national champions. And I was like, all right, this is really cool. I'm going to go there, and I can also pursue a Bible degree. And so choosing that college for me was very easy because I knew what I wanted and I knew what I needed at the time. I knew that those were the two things, right? Like I needed, well, really three things, like a good community, Division I program, and a place to study the Bible more. And so they had all those things, and it just worked out for me. I know, unfortunately, that's not the case for a lot of athletes in high school. There's a lot of applying. There's a lot of figuring out where to go and what to do. And I'm sure I'll talk about this at some point, hopefully in this, but Liberty has been a great thing for me, but in many ways it's also been an unhealthy thing for me in the sense that I learned a lot about Division I sports that I think are there's just a lot of there's a huge business side of this and a huge side to Division I sports, to where it goes from high school, where it is really fun, to suddenly you're treated like a professional athlete. And it's great because you're given all the gear, you're given all the techniques, you're given all these new things. But if you're not careful, it'll take away the joy of the sport. And so my advice to high school athletes would be to, it's important to look at the community. It's important to look at the studies. I think it's also really important to look at yourself and ask yourself the question, am I prepared to to go into a higher level program, and like, am I solid enough internally as my own person to be a confident athlete? Because again, it's a business, and so you have to do things the way that the school needs it. And so that's what I would encourage high school athletes, is to take the time to figure out who you are and what you want. And if that school doesn't offer that for you on the team, or what you think you might know, it might not be the place for you. So
Yeah, thank you. So here, let's go to some questions people were dropping in Instagram.
let's do it. I'm
Yeah,
excited about
so
this.
first question is just, what are some of your tips to, if you ever been injured, and if you were injured, best ways to prevent overtraining or injury, and that whole topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Are you allowed to tell me who wrote this?
Ethan Whitaker, if you know him. Shout
Okay.
out to Ethan.
Let's go, Ethan.
Yeah.
Good question, Ethan. So again, with my story with running, I was always pretty low mileage. Like I mentioned, 25 miles a week was towards like championship season of track. So, cross country, I'd have to talk to my dad. I can't even remember. It's probably 45 miles a week. I never had a big injury. So I'll be upfront about that. I know a lot of distance runners have a lot of, kind of hip things and shin things and stuff like that. I was blessed to just never have an injury. I will say some preventative measures that have been so helpful for me. Stretching and rolling, for sure. That's always important, especially like right after workouts, because your muscles are loose, and so kind of allowing them to stay loose is helpful. But lifting, understanding how to lift and do some Olympic lifting, and doing that consistently has been so helpful in keeping me injury free, because it teaches your muscles how to get stronger. You break them down, you build them up, and you can pretty much start to become like unstoppable in terms of injuries, because when you start to recognize like one side of your body is weaker than the other side, lifting allows you to strengthen those muscles and to make sure that everything's intact. So my dad was great with this. He had us start doing lifts, the whole team, for the most part, when I was in middle school. So I learned like power cleans and deadlifts and squats and stuff like that when I was in 8th grade. And I was terrible when I started. I was so tight. I still am pretty tight, but I was really tight doing those lifts. But learning the techniques of how to do it has literally carried in all the way to today, to where I think a big reason why I haven't been injured is because, well, one, low mileage for sure, but also there was this huge foundation of I was just strong. My legs were strong, my core was good. And so, yeah, those supplemental exercises are huge. It cannot just be running. If it's just running, you're going to break down really quickly. And if not in high school, definitely in college. And if not in college, after college. So lifting, stretching, rolling. And I think also on the mental side of things, because I think our mind plays a huge part in our injuries, making running fun and doing things outside of running and getting your mind off of your body for a bit, because athletes are really good at putting a lot of time into their body. But sometimes we need to have fun like the normal person does. So
yeah. So next question. At what point were you most hopeless, and how did you recover from that?
Oh my gosh, who asked that one?
And I could check. I'll get back to you on who asked that one.
No, yeah, don't worry. You don't even have to say it. Yeah. So, man, what was my most hopeless? At what point was I love questions like, yeah, I love questions like these, because I love being able to share what God has brought me through, because I think there's such a redemptive story through hopelessness and through times of being down. Man, I would say it depends on what you talk about when we talk about being at our lowest point. I think there's been several points in my life so far where I've hit lows. With running, and my mental state, probably some of my years in high school. I mean, I would have pretty severe panic attacks at night, and it would wake up my family, and sleepless nights, and just struggling to stay focused in life in general. So yeah, definitely nights and in sophomore and junior time when the pressure of colleges was increasing and all of that. Those were my lowest points. But actually, even this last year and a half has been a low point in a good sense, because I've taken time away from running. So it's been a low point in that I'm not training and all that. But I think in both times, in high school and in college, the way that I coped was first and foremost through recognizing, coming back to like, okay, my identity is not in the sport of running. My identity is in being a child of God, being saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ and what he's done. And so he was the one who took the pressure off of me completely. When I would go too deep into a hole of like, oh my gosh, I need to figure this out, do this thing, it was like, okay, let me come back to the reality that I'm broken. We're all broken. This is normal. It's normal for us to feel things like this. It's what we do with it. And I was like, I need to bring this to my friends. I need to bring this to Jesus. I need to bring this to, to my family. And so the coping through that was definitely learning how to embrace grace, embrace rest, and recognize like I was created to rest in Jesus, right? Rest in God for what he's done. And the outflow of what I do from there is all the work. So that's how I learned how to cope. And I can confidently say now, going through years of kind of grappling with this idea of like, how do I work and rest at the same time? Like I'm at a place where I understand and feel like sky's the limit in a lot of areas of my life, because I'm learning that my first priority is to rest, and then everything is an outflow. And I've watched my life kind of explode in a good way from there. So work and rest, man, a good balance of both.
Awesome. So last one here. This one's actually from my mom. What are some of your hobbies outside of running? I know this is going to be about running, but what else do you like to do with your free time?
Yeah. Well, thank you to your mom.
Yeah.
I wonder if my mom asks any questions. She probably would add some stuff in there too. That would probably be her question to me as well. Yeah. So right now, there's several things I like to do. One thing is I love anything social media. I love being able to brand my life and to brand story. I think, again, we talk about identity. When we're able to share our stories and what God has done in our lives, it helps us to understand what's happening in our lives. And there's this world that we can enter into of sharing our stories in unique ways. One of the ways I do that is through a blog I started called, it's just noahtin.com. And there's 4 sections of life I talk about: faith, running, balance, mental and emotional health, and life. So anything like music and journaling and other things like that. And the goal of this platform is to create a place for me to write my thoughts and to share it with people publicly. And also for some of my friends to write their own thoughts and share it on that page. So writing for sure is definitely one thing. Social media, like I mentioned, is another thing. Being able to schedule posts and kind of tease fun videos and things like that is awesome. I recently got into learning how to rap, and I don't really know how to produce music yet, but got some free tracks online and learn how to
Go check them out, guys.
Yeah. I have a song on SoundCloud. I have another one coming out soon, which I'm gonna announce. But yeah, learning how to share my story through metaphors and rhyming and cadence and all this stuff is so much fun. So yeah, rapping, writing, and really I love reading, hanging out with friends. So but a lot of those kind of like creative hobbies are my niche for sure.
Yeah. Thanks. You think we have time for one more?
All right.
It's kind of a big topic. Are you a big fan of the sport?
Yeah, I watched World Championships
Yeah.
couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
That got
so
me so pumped. I really think Trevor Bassett and Ry Benjamin are awesome 400 hurdle guys. To hear Trevor Bassett's story, he was a D2 athlete as well and had to face a lot of adversity. And to watch him go from, and he was a 400 guy as well, to watch him go from like a Division II athlete to like bronze medalist at the Worlds is incredible. It's incredible. So cool. And Ry Benjamin also is from New York, and I saw him run at States. So I like them a lot. Sydney McLaughlin is one of my inspirations. Absolutely. I remember there were a few times at New Balance Nationals where I ran, and she was there as well. And I was just so amazed by like her speed. And I think she's an incredible leader, and the way that she shares the gospel, I think through running as well, is has always been really cool. So she's great. I think on the distance end, somebody that I really look up to right now is Grant. I think Grant Fisher is really cool. He, I forget what he placed in the 10K. Was he fourth?
Yeah.
It was like a spot off, and then the 5K he tripped up at the end, or something happened. But he's always somebody who seems super steady as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if I gotta go, like, okay, who's my favorite distance runner of all time? Oh man, US or
Anything.
I really like Mo Farah.
Yeah.
I've always really liked him. His energy has always been really cool, and his longevity of how long he's been in the sport too, and his success is pretty remarkable. So
all right. Any last words while we wrap this up? Or
man, I just want to say to all the Calvin Runs fans, definitely give his YouTube a subscribe to his YouTube, follow him on Instagram. You're doing some cool stuff here, man. How's your training going?
It's going great, man. Just putting in the work.
Good. Yeah, I guess the last thing that I'll say is I'm really excited because I'm getting back into running. So I'll be running at Dallas Baptist University and in the spring. So one more semester here at Liberty, and then I'm heading there. So I'm excited, I'm healthy, and I'm ready to go. So
all right. Thanks, man.
All right, brother.
Thanks for being on here. See ya.
Appreciate you, man. I hope you got everything you needed.
Oh yeah, anytime. Peace.